Hello and welcome. I'm Corinne from Sundari Healing, and today I have Helane Wahbeh. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes.
Okay, good. She and I went to high school together, and she is a leading researcher for channeling. And as most of you know, I channel various angels and beings and ancestors and all of it. So I have a list of questions that she's agreed to answer for us, just to give us more of an idea of what channeling is all about. And if you have questions in the future or after this, you can email me or you can comment on this, and we'll get some answers to you. So welcome, and so I have my first question is, why were you interested in studying channeling?
Great question. It's really lovely to be here with you and talking about one of my favorite topics of channeling. And so I want to kind of start off first, actually, with what I mean by channeling, because when people hear that word, they often think of really different things. And so when I say channeling, what I mean is kind of a broad umbrella definition of being able to access information and energy from beyond time and space. And I'm proposing that everybody can channel, but that the way their channeling shows up for them is unique to them. And it really exists on this wide spectrum from, intuitive gut hunches to knowing the future to getting information from dreams to being able to kind of tune in to distant locations. And then kind of on the more rare side of that spectrum is what people call mental mediumship, where they feel like they can connect with deceased humans, or trance channeling, which is what many people think of when they hear the word channeling. And so trance channeling, in my mind, is kind of a subcategory of the larger channeling. And trance channelers believe that their body is used as a vehicle for a non-physical being to speak through them. So like you just mentioned, you feel like there's angels, there's guides, there's beings that, move my mouth and information comes out. And that is a really unique and yet I think growing type of channeling, is what I would call trance channeling. And so back to your question now, I was actually raised around trance channeling. So, as early as 10 years old, I went to my grandparents' house for what they called meetings. And there were like, 30 people sitting in a circle. And my uncle would go into this, trance, and he would start speaking in this different way. And my grandmother would do that. And then later in life, my mother learned how to do that. And I did so many different sessions with her. And then eventually I learned how to trance channel as well. And so this was a very, kind of deeply spiritual aspect of my entire life, but I could never, bring it into my work world until um, about 10 years ago, when I changed paths and ended up being able to work at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And so now I get to study it and wrote a book about it and can be out in the open about all these really fun channeling topics.
That's so cool. Um, I had no idea when we were friends way back when. But I have a question about, like, what when you first experienced or saw this, what did you was it just like normal for you, or was it, or like what did you think?
The first time, I still have a very, very clear memory of the first meeting I went to. And my mom, you know, bless her, but she just did not prepare me at all. Like, she's just like, we're going to go to your grandmother and grandfather's house. I'm like, okay. And, so I walk in and I'm like, what is going on? And I, kind of figured it out. And as a 10-year-old, my fear was that, oh no, are the spirits going to jump in me? And I
Mhm.
didn't really understand um, the kind of energetic and consensual nature of what was happening in that particular space. And I do now, and we can certainly talk about that. But um, I was really nervous, and that ended up resulting in many conversations with my family, including my grandfather, who taught me a worldview in which we are more than our physical bodies, that we have non physical being allies that exist, our guides, spirit guides, ancestors, etc., who don't have physical bodies, but they are around all the time and can support us if we are open to that. And that if my intention energetic is aligned with positivity and light and love, that no harm can come to me, and that this thing that was practiced in that space was completely consensual, and there was permission given, and it was a collaborative relationship, rather than being possessed or some sort of negative, dark, dense entity that was attacking or creating harm in some way.
Yeah, so, like, I know for me, I agreed to be a channel, but you have to give your consent, right? Like, you can't just all of a sudden, like, start channeling because they feel like it. Like, you have to give your consent. Is that correct?
Um, that's a really excellent question, and I'm asked it all the time. For the most part, um, they are consensual relationships. And so, whether you consciously say, yes, I give permission, this is okay, or it's kind of more subtle, um, I do think that most channeling happens in this way. There is a very, very small percentage that is not consensual and would be considered a possession or a darker entity, etc. But I think that's incredibly rare,
Mhm.
and doesn't happen very often. So I don't want to scare the audience and thinking, oh, they're like I was that 10-year-old, like, oh, they're just going to jump in me like that. Um, doesn't really happen except in very rare situations. And usually it's because the person is not well, or they're not doing, they have, you know, very severe issues that are going on with them that allow them to be open to that.
Yeah, interesting. Um, what are different types of channeling, that people do?
Trance
Like,
channeling, you mean?
well, there's trance channeling, and then people can also channel like through music and through writing. Like,
Yeah,
there's I how many different ways to channel are there? Is it kind of infinite?
I think so. And I think, if you think about, here's Helene in this, physical blob with this perceived boundary. If I say this is all kind of that I am, and that all I am is my personality of Helene, then the idea that I might get inspiration or information or get something from beyond that seems impossible. And yet, if you hold the awareness that we're actually all interconnected and that we have access to all that is, that we're essentially always channeling, and we're always sort of interacting with this larger whole. And if you're open to it, if you believe it, then you can actually bring in incredible creativity. Um, so yes, you can really look at it from a very broad perspective of what channeling is, and that we're all essentially channeling.
Yeah. And so how common is it for people to channel, like the trance channeling, or like what I do? Are there a lot of people that are doing it now, or is it still kind
Um,
of rare?
if you look at the spectrum of channeling experiences, it's definitely on the rarer side. Let's say you had a room of 10 people. Well, let's say a room of 100 people.
Mhm.
Maybe a few in those 100 would have had an experience or were actively interested in that.
Mhm.
So it definitely is more rare, but I have definitely noticed over the 10 years that I've worked at IONS that it is growing and more people are becoming interested in it. More and more people are kind of being just intuitively guided to learn how to do it. Um, Myself, I learned how to do it through hypnosis, and we just actually published that protocol. So anyone
Mhm.
who wanted to learn how to trans channel could get that paper and work with a hypnotist to learn how to do that. And this idea that everyone has access to that if they want it.
That's so cool. So I do past life regression hypnosis, and that's not it's there's many kinds of hypnosis. So but when I do it, people connect to their subconscious. So is that a form of channeling as well?
Um, I imagine, if you connect to your own subconscious self, I wouldn't necessarily call that trance channeling. Um, but what's really fascinating is there are a lot of people who have come to me who are trance channelers who through QHHT
Mhm.
went into a trance channeling state. So the
Oh,
direction was for them to connect with their subconscious self, but
mhm.
then a completely different being showed up and was communicating through them.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting too.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that with with one of my colleagues.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes.
That'd be fun. Um, so how does channeling work? Did we did you explain that already?
The short answer is we don't know exactly how it works. And there have been a number of studies done looking at physiology, like what's happening in the brain and the heart and the body. And the results are kind of mixed, but in general, what we see is it's very similar to what you see in meditation studies, where the brain is awake, aware, but also very relaxed. There's also um, something called coherence, where the different parts of the brain are working with each other. And so we did a study where we actually found less overall coherence during the trance state compared to a mind wandering task, which is really interesting. But, I'm talking about these physiology studies, but they're really just like correlates of channeling. Um, and so, from a scientific perspective, we really don't know what it is or how it works. When you talk to channelers who are channeling and you look at the channeled content, there's a lot of talk about frequencies, about vibration, about how, the non physical being matches their frequency to the channeler's frequency. And it's similar to like a telepathic connection, and that they um, intend information to come through. They use the library of the mind of the channeler. So the channeler's mind does definitely play into it, and then the words come through. So that's a very simplistic kind of model for how it might work, but I would love to figure out more details on exactly that. It's also described as like the brain is a radio, and
Mhm.
it through intention is picking up a specific radio frequency. What I find so remarkable is it's not it's doesn't seem exactly like telepathy, because there is a control of the body, like the mouth is moving. I don't know if you've seen some trance channelers who are actually moving the channeler's body. And so it feels a little bit more than just kind of a telepathic informational transmission, but that there's some kind of level of control of the channeler's body in some way.
Yeah. Kind of like Daryl Anka and Bashar.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating watching him.
Yeah.
Um, it's not the same as being psychic, or what's the difference between channeling and being psychic?
So, um, with trance channeling, you like, I know you could probably speak to this too. Like when I trance channel, I have no idea what's going to be coming out of my mouth. Like the Helene that's me is kind of stepped aside and the
Mhm.
information's just coming through. Like there's no, um, I'm not translating it or, seeing things and then repeating back what I see. I'm kind of just stepped over, if you will, while that
Mhm.
trance channeling is happening. So that's very different from uh, intuition or psychic things where I'm actually, tuning into information at large or, maybe picking up someone's mental impressions and seeing symbols and then repeating it back to somebody. Um, I think that they're both possible because of our inherent interconnected nature, but that they're different in the mechanism or how they work, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and why do you think like it's such a taboo subject?
Well, it doesn't really fit with our current model of how the world works. So, right now, in our dominant kind of scientific paradigm is what's called physicalism. And so they say that the only thing that exists is what's physical, like what I can touch, what's, physically around me. And so all these things we're talking about is non-physical. And so the idea that, I could, well, the idea that number one, non-physical beings exist is completely impossible in that model. And number two, that I could talk to them or interact with them in some way is impossible. And so, you know, I think the taboos are loosening, but in general, when you bring this up in a Western um, social environment, your mental health is questioned because
You're
it
right.
doesn't fit with the model of reality. This perception that you could communicate with a non-physical being is outside of their view of reality, which means there's something wrong with you and you have a mental health issue. But we've done
Right.
many, many studies looking at mental health in channelers, and it's very consistent across the board that these are, very high functioning, normal individuals, and that channeling actually improves their quality of life. Now, there are some people where the experiences are very severe, they're very strong, they're maybe negatively have negative content. And um, if that's how your channeling shows up for you, then I would absolutely recommend that you get support around that and see what's going on. But for the majority of people, it actually adds and supports their life, and they're very, very highly functional.
Yeah. Um, you had mentioned noetic. You're the director of research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Can you, what exactly is noetic? And can you give me some examples?
Yeah, yeah. So noetic actually means inner wisdom, coming from the Greek word gnosis. And so it's all about tapping into that inner wisdom and studying how that works. And the Institute of Noetic Sciences, the acronym is IONS. So IONS was actually founded by Edgar Mitchell in 1973, and he was an Apollo 14 astronaut and
Oh,
actually
wow.
the sixth person to walk on the moon. And so he actually went to the moon and, did his job on the moon and was coming home, and his capsule was spinning round and round, and he was seeing the sun and the stars and the moon. And he went into this incredible transcendent oneness experience where he had the embodied feeling that he was everything and everything was him, that he could experience, he was the universe and could experience the universe. And as an astronaut engineer, this was like completely foreign to him. And so he came back to Earth and was like, what the heck was that? And so IONS has been looking at this idea of interconnectedness and that we're all interconnected for over 50 years now,
Wow.
through research and experience education.
Can you explain a little bit more on how we are interconnected for that concept?
Yes. So this idea that we're all interconnected, I think, is getting a lot more support these days, especially with what we're learning from um, quantum physics. So there is a big discovery in quantum physics where they could take two photons or light particles and they could pair them in a way where they were called entangled. And you would take one photon and take it thousands of miles away. When one of those photons changed its spin, the other one would instantaneously spin in the opposite direction, just showing that it was intrinsically linked. And that's what we're all made of. Just if I could explain it very simplistically. And at the Big Bang, we're all entangled, and we see this playing out in many, many different ways. But I think quantum physics gives us a kind of scientific way to perhaps view how that might actually be possible.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, and I believe it too. I mean it's I think that the how one person acts is related to how you act, um and in this world today we need to you know be our best selves and spread the love and the lights to get through like all this stuff that we're going through.
Yes, absolutely. I think another fun way to think about it is, if you imagine this oneness state that everything is one, and you imagine that on the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So that spectrum is one thing, but the wavelength of red is super different than the wavelength of orange, right? And so just like you and I are very different from each other, and yet we're like manifested unique expressions of the one thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
I think,
fascinating.
yeah, and I think once humans embody that in a very, very felt sense way, it's impossible to harm other people in the way that we're harming and being violent and destroying our earth and acting in these ways where, that are totally bought into separation, that, oh, what I do actually doesn't matter, or that you're different or separate from me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a good thing to remember.
Yes.
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 Well, this was wonderful. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, just thanks for chatting with me about my favorite topic here. If anyone's interested in learning more about the research that we do, they can go to www.noetic.org. We have all of our publications there. We have opportunities to be in research studies yourself. We have free webinars on Fridays and lots of really fun ways to get involved.
And you teach, right? You teach how to do channeling?
I do have a couple courses through the Shift Network that are just evergreen now. And so, yes, and I also have my book, The Science of Channeling, that gets into all the research that's been done on channeling. And that was made into a course, and then another course called The Best Practices of Channeling. So that's gathering all the kind of wisdom and information that I've experienced and distilling it to kind of the major elements of what's important to practices to incorporate into your own channeling path. Yeah.
That's so great. I'll put all of the information down below so people can find you if they would like to reach out and or read your book. I think that is our books now, multiple books. So thank you so much for everything. And it's been such a nice time connecting with you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just wish for all your audience that their channeling path unfolds with ease and joy and just so much fun, and to not take it seriously and just be very loving and kind with yourself. Just take it one little step at a time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you so much. I know you're busy. Appreciate your time.
I'm going to stop.